All right. Meanwhile, the power is out for just under 2 million customers in Florida, and they could be dark for weeks. What's worse, supply chain issues could delay the recovery. Trade groups say there's a nationwide shortage of critical electrical equipment and wait times to get it as high as 3 years. They also need new lumber, concrete, drywall, shingles, gutters, paint, asphalt, you name it. How hard is it going to be to get this stuff where it needs to go? Joining me to discuss the supply chain expert, founder and CEO of Resilinc, Bindiya Vakil. Bindiya, it's great to see you. Thank you so much for being with us. Supply chain has been a problem.
Great to be here.
As a result of the pandemic and Biden administration policies, people are suffering across the country as a result of this. So I can only imagine how this is going to exacerbate the situation when a state like Florida is in a national emergency.
Absolutely. And a state like Florida, which has more than 4,000 sites mapped in our database in Resilinc, that these sites are critical to supply chain with manufacturing, logistics, distribution. More than 70,000 parts are mapped to these sites. These parts are frequently used in a wide range of applications across high-tech, automotive, industrial, you mentioned construction already, but also pharmaceutical and healthcare applications. So this is a very wide-ranging impact, and specifically because of power outages, factories need power and uninterrupted power. So the recovery is extended. Even if the power gets restored, this has already caused a major supply chain disruption.
And you bring up a great point, right? It will be difficult to get supplies down to Florida where they need to go, but also there are manufacturing facilities there that other companies rely on to create products and distribute them as well. So what should companies be doing that were not hit by the storm, operating in another state, but say your supplier is in Florida?
Yeah, it is really interesting. Most companies don't really map their supply chain properly. They really know where their parts are coming from, which could be the warehouse that they've placed their orders to. But beyond that warehouse, there's a whole supply chain. And companies that do not know what that supply chain looks like right now, they are scrambling. And some cases, they might find out 2 weeks later that a critical supplier had a factory in Florida. Whereas what we see with Resilinc's customers is these companies are mapping their supply chain. And even before hurricane season began, our customers were moving supplies out of hurricane regions proactively so that when situations like these happen, they have some level of protection. They have inventory sitting outside hurricane region ready to be deployed. Now, obviously, there are port issues right now, as well as air travel is disrupted. This does affect belly cargo. So there is definitely impact that is going to be felt across the board. But companies that do have that investment in better visibility, as well as mapping and early monitoring systems, do tend to fare a lot better than those who are leaving it to luck.
And what about the infrastructure problems that we're seeing on the ground, right? Ports are an issue, air travel is another issue, but ground transportation is going to be difficult for quite some time with the destruction of roads and bridges, as you mentioned. So if you're on the ground in Florida, at some point rebuilding efforts will begin, but how quickly can they expect supplies they need to come to them?
One of the biggest problems when hurricanes cause widespread disruption and flooding is a lot of the roads are not accessible. Supply chains need railways, roadways, and air all to be functioning efficiently in order for goods to flow. We also see trucks tend to get roped in by the aid organization to deliver critical supplies needed for the repair and reconstruction effort. That also in turn causes supply chain disruption. Also remember that companies have been monitoring the hurricane for several days now. So even if you are shipping off of eastern seaboard ports right now, you are seeing disruptions because all the available capacity was booked up for those companies trying to reroute shipments from Florida ports. So it's really chaotic at the moment. Again, ground means the factories, the regions and sites that are on the ground, they are definitely seeing more difficulty. Even if the site itself is fine, they're having trouble receiving parts and shipments in.
Bindiya, let me also ask you, I mean, there are people across the country trying to build homes, trying to renovate, do different things that have experienced or been told by their contractors, you can't do this for a year, or you're going to have to gather your parts, it's going to take a lot longer than expected, or prices on certain materials have literally doubled as a result. Since we're in a catastrophic situation now in Florida, potentially maybe rebuilding in other states as well, depending on how hard this storm hits Georgia and the Carolinas, it's only going to clamp down on an already difficult and tight supply chain with limited supplies. So what happens to pricing across the board for everybody else?
Well, we are already in an inflationary market. This does not help. If anything, it makes it worse. Not only nationally, but internationally. Remember, Florida exports billions of dollars worth of material all over the world. And these are parts and products that go into a wide range of devices. We've already been seeing some level of constraints and rationing that has been going on. Now we will see more of that. A lot of electronics have been disrupted already. This does not help. Obviously, a lot of high-tech electronics get exported out of Florida. So nationwide, we will see impact, supply constraints, rationing, as well as price increases, as well as globally factories. So this impact will ripple over the coming months. In fact, it could take as much as 4 to 6 months before things go back to normal, and we still are not out of hurricane season yet.
Yeah, no, that is true. There could be other storms coming. This is going to be a tough pill to swallow. Bindiya, thank you so much for laying that out for us so clearly. Good to see you tonight.